This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Sahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwallpod podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 382 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will talk about Borussia Dortmund's latest signing, Donyell Malen, and we will discuss the contract extension of Mahmoud Dahoud and maybe cover the injury malaise if there are any to cover, but more on that later. For now, I'm very happy to introduce Lars Pollmann. Hello Lars, how are you doing? I'm very glad you're joining me for this little discussion about our new striker or midfielder. We'll see about that. How are you doing?
Hello Stefan, I'm doing fine. I'm just a little concerned about our cursed intro because it only now occurred to me that apart from Marco Reus, everyone is basically gone. I mean, we had Kagawa, we had Shine, and now Sancho. So one of you is going to have to come back to Dortmund and get some new players to speak our intro.
Well, yeah, maybe we can get a couple new players to do the intro, to be honest. But I kind of like the sort of timeline we have, and Marco Reus is the consistency, if you will. But no, I kind of like the historic tinge, if you will, of Nuri and Shinji and so on. So I wouldn't describe it as cursed at all, Lars. I don't know, but I guess that's the pop cultural term right now people use, I guess. So anywho, the Black and Yellows made it official finally that Donyell Malen from PSV will join Borussia Dortmund. The 22-year-old has signed a contract until June 30th, 2026. And I think the transfer fee was around about 30 million. I don't know how much of an agent fee Mr. Raiola is pocketing or what the add-ons are and other clauses in that contract. I honestly don't know, but I think 30 million is sort of the sum that's been reported everywhere. And I'm actually quite excited about this transfer, even though I don't think he is really the like-for-like replacement of Jadon Sancho. Just don't think he's good enough at dribbling for that. But Lars, what do you think of this transfer? I mean, obviously, a player that's very explosive.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have to preface this with saying that the biggest exposure I've had of Malen actually came at the Euros. So you could argue it's a fresh memory, if you like, but it's also a very small sample size. I did actually watch some PSV games early on last season to watch Mario Götze, who obviously signed for them. But I don't necessarily remember. Malen either didn't really play in those because he was still nursing a long-term knee injury, or he just didn't do anything. I mean, if anything, my memory is probably wrong. So given my limited exposure, I can basically see what everybody else saw at the Euros. That is the short area explosiveness that you kind of mentioned. I think on the first few meters sprinting, I'm not sure anyone in Dortmund's squad is faster than Malen is now. So that's obviously lends itself to being considered a good counter-attacking player because he can just run away from people. And I think that's also something you saw at the Euros, notwithstanding his bad decision against the Czech Republic, which kind of doomed the Netherlands in that game. He scored a lot of goals at PSV last season. Obviously, the Dutch league kind of has a bad reputation for producing attacking talent because a lot of players can score in the Netherlands and fail to be as productive elsewhere. But I think whenever Dortmund pay 30 million for a guy, you would assume that they scouted him really well. And
Oh man,
then you look at
kind of show the backflash here, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean some other players, but I think given that age bracket in which Malen sits, they have usually been pretty solid signing young guys. And also, I think there were somewhat substantial rumors about Malen potentially also being considered at the likes of Liverpool and Juventus. So that's decent company to be in for Dortmund. So I'm quite optimistic about him working out. I think the most exciting for me is actually the tactical possibilities that come with this transfer, just because obviously, as I said, I don't necessarily know too much about him on a personal level. But having a player who ostensibly could play as the main striker in some games, as the secondary striker to Erling Haaland in other games, but also as more regular winger in another set of games, I think that just adds variety. And I think when we talked first about Sancho leaving for Man United for real this season, I think what I said then was I wouldn't try to sign someone to do all the stuff that Sancho did, because you basically end up with the worst version of what you already had. And in that sense, I'm quite pleased that they went and got a different flavor of a player, if you like.
Yeah, I think it will alter the complexion of Borussia Dortmund. I mean, we have not seen Dortmund play a two-striker system for ages. I can't really remember when this was even like a constant thing.
First Klopp season, I think they played quite a bit with the diamond and Zidane and Valdez up front.
Yeah, something like that. But
I think
yes, you are right. But I mean that's
Zidane, still like 13 years
Zidane
ago.
played a little bit behind Valdez, to be honest. Often, and later on he was more of the number 10 in that system. It was, but I don't know. I never really considered Mo Zidane much of a striker. And Nelson Valdez, yeah, well, it's Nelson Valdez. So I'm really excited to see how his dynamic will be with Erling Haaland, to be honest, because they are both very, very fast, and I think the explosiveness itself is pretty cool. If you watch any of the highlight reels and him in training, what will be apparent very soon is that he is a big fan of the cheeky back heel, which myself I really appreciate. I think that's very easy on the eye, and if you can utilize that well, it usually speeds up your combination play, because that just means you can pass on the ball per one touch from different angles, and that usually helps. So in that regard, obviously the other good thing is that he's already and from a Dortmund perspective, I think already is what you can use here, already 22 years old. And I mean, he came through the ranks of first, I think it was Ajax, then he switched to Arsenal. So he had, pretty good youth academies, and then obviously moved back to PSV. And now he is a Dortmund player as a Dutch international. So what I'm looking forward to, and I hope something will get out of him, is first of all, maybe his best footballing years. And of course, consistency, because he's not 18 or 19 anymore. I think with 22 years, you are usually in a very good shape and know what to do on the field. You're not a stranger to the game anymore. At least players nowadays are not. I mean, he definitely has over 150 or so professional games under his belt already. So this is basically what I'm really hoping for, that he will be a consistent goal threat for Borussia Dortmund. I really don't know how his shot creation and assist skills for other players will go. I mean, if you go on FBref and look at the statistics and the scouting report, which is really nice, you will see that his actual assists are not really high of a number, but his expected assists are a little higher. Maybe with better finishers around him like Haaland, this will improve as well. So certainly something I'm hoping that he will utilize a little bit better, because I think when you have a 2-striker setup and you have one less Jadon Sancho, there need to be also some goal creations for your teammates, and I hope that's something that can happen. But yeah, I'm looking forward to fast combination play. But obviously, Lars, as it always is, we just basically have to wait and see how he really will be implemented, and against which team it works better and against which teams it works worse. Do you think this is the sort of player that can light it up even more so in big games, like say against Bayern, where Dortmund have not fared too well in recent years? Do you think his transfer should instill some hope in some Dortmund fans that at least in those games Dortmund get a more of an edge, let's say? Obviously, you always have to factor in that Jadon Sancho no longer is a factor, but still going to ask you that question.
Yeah, and I mean, I have absolutely zero way of answering it, Stefan. I mean, the biggest game he played that I've seen, as I said before, was at the Euros against the Czech Republic in the round of, 16? Played decently well, but, missed the biggest chance of the game for the Dutch national team, which conceded like 2 minutes later. So, I mean, given that one data point I have, I would say that probably he isn't going to be the big beacon of hope, and in the same breath, I have to say that one data point is not enough to go on. So
no, that's very true.
I would argue that.
I've read that he misses a lot of chances, but I've also seen that he overperforms his XG. So I don't know really what to make out of this, because like you, it's not like I'm sitting there with my bag of popcorn and watch PSV religiously. So yeah, also it's always hard to extrapolate, even if you watch a lot of Dutch soccer, to see how then he would fare in the Bundesliga. So yeah, these questions are very speculative, but still, I want you to speculate, Lars. So how do you think he'll move around in the Dortmund field? Where do you see the synergies happening? Is it going to be with Royce, Haaland, or more with Reina or Hazard? How do you think this, he from just the little exposure you had, how do you think he will jive with other players?
First of all, just to track back a little bit, actually, I think there's been a number of cases in the last few years of, top talents leaving the Dutch league and actually doing pretty well. Thinking obviously about Frenkie de Jong at Barcelona or Matthijs de Ligt at Juventus. I don't know that we necessarily can put Malen in that echelon of, super talents that every club in Europe wanted. But, I mean, it is what it is. And it's not like back in the day, I think, 10, 12 years ago, if a player did well in the Dutch league, most fans in Germany probably thought, yeah, but that's like our second division. And I think that has changed a little bit. And, given how well he combined with Memphis Depay at the Euros, after unseating Wout Weghorst for the starting spot during the group stages, that gives me some level of confidence that he should be able to jive well with basically everyone. I mean, given his profile, he and Haaland should do pretty well together. I could also see cases where he's playing up front with Moukoko, obviously. They are both, attacking players that like to move around quite a bit. I could see him play up front with Torgan Hazard from time to time. I think pretty much every attacking player at Dortmund got along well on the field and off the field with Marco Reus. So I don't think that necessarily there's anything to point us towards there being a problem in that regard. But obviously, it's all quite a bit of speculation, and it's presumably also going to take quite a bit of time to see exactly how it all will pan out, just because there's so little time left for Malen to actually make an impression before the games actually start to count. I mean, We are recording on Thursday afternoon or evening in Germany, so they are playing against Bologna on Friday evening. Malen is not going to feature much, if at all, in that game after only a few training sessions. So before the cup match, I'm assuming they have like 1 or 2 test matches still left, but that's not a lot to go on, especially considering that we are kind of assuming that they are going to make this relatively large tactical switch to a 2-striker formation. So I think especially early on, it's going to be a bit of a work in progress, and perhaps you will only catch glimpses of like his individual sparkling with his athleticism, with his creativity, with his eye for a shot, because I think he took quite a lot of shots at PSV, and obviously that was a team under Roger Schmidt who coached Leverkusen, for example, in Germany back in the day, and has a somewhat similar background to Marco Rose, both having spent time at the Red Bull School of Football, if you like. So I think there are enough, data points to be cautiously optimistic, generally speaking, but also to think that it's quite possibly going to take a bit of time.
No, I 100% assume that everything will take a lot of time, especially the first couple of months of the season. I think will be a bit rocky, looking at even availability, which players are fit, which are, present but not really fit, you know what I mean? We had a long season plus the Euros, so I don't know what kind of shape this team will be in, and at the same time, I also do not know how well Dortmund will actually do under Rose and the tactical switch. And obviously losing Jadon Sancho will be felt in certain moments of games, because he was a tremendous influence, obviously. So this is going to be missing now. So there are a lot of variables going on at the same time, where I am really cautiously optimistic about the season start. It's not like I'm sort of standing at the top of the world and saying and declaring that Dortmund will definitely win the championship this year and everything's going to be awesome. Far from it right now, but at the same time, I also don't. I'm not as pessimistic as I was before last season, to be honest. So we'll see how this pans out. But one final point I want to make about Malen from the little exposure, let's put it this way, I got from the Euro games. This is what I find really interesting is he really isn't a pushover, and something I think that we will appreciate in Dortmund, that even when defenders get physical with him, that he does not fall down. He doesn't have tendency to flop. He, I think, balances his body quite well. I don't know if that's because of a low center of gravity or just a good physique, but I think that's really helpful in the Bundesliga against the types of defenders he will probably play against, that he does not get bullied that easily, and in terms of hold-up play, especially with a 2-striker setup, I think it's quite valuable. So that's something I'm looking really forward to from that tactical aspect, that Dortmund have more moments this season than last season where they managed to retain possession, because in last season there were often phases where Dortmund were under pressure and then they just punted the ball out and couldn't really hold on to it up front, because it was just Haaland by himself. And maybe in a different system, Dortmund have an easier time in moments under pressure to actually get the ball out and take the momentum away from the opponent with stuff like that, where Malen holds on to the ball here and there and creates a couple more passing options that way. I don't know if they really will pan out that way, but at least on paper, if I'm looking at it, that's a very boring phase of the game usually. But I think could make a big difference overall how consistent Dortmund are, and how they deal with pressure from opponents, especially in high profile games like in the Champions League. So maybe that will come to fruition, or the things I'm seeing are just rubbish and too small of a sample size. But yeah, that's it. I think overall, everyone can be excited about this transfer, even though it's 30 million euros, and I feel like in general Dortmund have fared worse when they spent more money than when they have spent less money. But I feel like this is a good transfer. I'm not getting the Yarmolenko at Giro Immobile vibes from him, to be honest. So that's very positive. I mean, he is a young and explosive player, and I think he is a really good fit, and I think he'll score many goals in the Bundesliga. So I'm really excited about him. Just hope he doesn't catch the yips, and all should be well. So with that being said, Lars, we do have also a contract extension. Mo Dahoud has put pen to paper and now added 1 year to his deal. I think his contract was running out in 22, but now it's running out in 23. What's up with that sort of non-committal commitment, if you will?
I think it's mostly down to financials. What people don't really realize is that Dahoud was on quite a large contract before this extension, and obviously before Corona times, because he was on his original deal that he signed sometime in early 2017, when he was kind of billed as Dortmund's next Gundogan, which we know hasn't panned out quite like that, especially in the first, 3 seasons or so. And now he's agreed to a bit of a pay cut, reportedly. I mean, obviously, I don't know full details, but that's been relatively widely reported. And given that, I think it makes sense for him to sign a 1 year deal or add 1 year to his deal and reassess the situation when presumably COVID times will be over. Although, is any one of us really confident that in 23, when his new deal runs out, that all the clubs will be flush with cash again because fans are back in the stands at full, and there's no reduction in TV money or whatever? I think that's still a bit optimistic from a personal point of view anyway. But it makes sense from his perspective.
I was going to ask, though, from Dortmund's perspective, do you think...
Yeah, and I also think that it kind of makes sense for Dortmund's perspective, even though I'm the junior vice president of the local Mo Dahoud fan club. Even I have to admit that for all his greatness, undenied greatness, he's still someone who, in his now 4 years at the club, has been somewhat disappointing for one reason or another for at least half of that time, arguably even more. Now, it's not all his fault, and some coaches Favre didn't necessarily appreciate what he can bring to the table consistently. There were also some untimely injuries and whatnot. But still, just because he's been very good for spells over the last 18 months or so, and extended spells, to be fair. And we voted him in a completely democratic and not biased way whatsoever as our player of the year, basically. So we all love him, but there's still some question marks over his consistency at the absolute highest level. So I think for Dortmund's perspective, it kind of makes sense to not go into too long a commitment, especially considering that a few players they did go into long commitments with are now on their payroll, while they would like that not to be the case. I'm looking at Roman Bürki, who got an absolutely nonsensical contract extension, which I think we criticized at the time, and voila, he's now the third wheel at the goalkeeper ranks, and probably not going to leave because nobody in early August or whatever is looking for a new goalkeeper that isn't, a clear-cut upgrade. So where's Roman Bürki gonna go? And, protecting themselves from having to ask the same question, which, knock on wood, we don't think is going to happen with Dahoud, still makes sense.
Yeah, Dahoud said in the final sentence of Dortmund's press release, now I'm looking forward to taking the next step with BVB and achieving my full potential. Which I think sort of hints at that I still don't think we've seen the best Dahoud that is in him, sort of. I think we've seen this last season a very good version of Mo Dahoud, and a version of Mo Dahoud that actually, does help Borussia Dortmund. But, I can understand why, from a club's perspective, you'd be, let's say, cautious to hand him another 3 or 5 year deal, especially as you just mentioned, Dortmund have a lot of wages to pay right now. 2 players also that maybe are not sort of holding up their end of the bargain, if you will. I don't know how much Nico Schulz is earning. I don't know how much Julian Brandt is earning. And I'm sure there are a few others that I could mention now, where I think it's a bit of a, wasted salary, if you will, in terms of what you're paying and what you're actually getting. And I think the case was definitely so with Dahoud for many years. I don't think he really justified his salary, to be honest, but at the same time, that's not something the players need to worry about. That's sort of the club making mistakes and maybe, trying to negotiate when he was still at Gladbach. I can understand why you want to offer Dahoud a lot, but then, you have to get more out of it, basically. So to me, this makes sense for both parties, as you just said as well. And I'm really hoping that he will no longer be dubbed the lockdown Iniesta, but also perform when he's actually, with fans in the stands. And I mean, overall, I think chances are that it's all going to plan, that he will play well and that he will get another contract extension after that. Maybe get another wage increase then. But I think he really needs to prove himself right now, just as a couple of other players. Maybe briefly, I think Dortmund made it official, Watzke made it official that he is definitely thinking that Brandt will stay on, or definitely will, just like Haaland. Do you think right decision? I think we discussed this already, but briefly, since now it's really official that he's not going to leave.
To be honest, I'm not sure there is much a decision to make because I don't think that there were any offers on the table for Brandt that would have made sense from an economical standpoint. I mean, we know and we've seen even in a Dortmund shirt and over not the shortest amount of time in Brandt's first season that he can be really effective for this team. And given that, and that he can presumably play at least 3, maybe 4 roles in what we assume is, Dortmund's main system or setup for next season. He's high quality cover for those positions, at least in theory, high quality. And I think, given that he's 25, it's his 3rd season at Dortmund. He was not included in the Euro squad for Germany. I think if there was ever kind of a situation in which the fire under Brandt's behind that has sometimes been put into question is lit by circumstances that he can not immediately control but influence heavily with the way he plays after the fact, if you like. I think there's a pretty decent chance that we see what Julian Brandt really is made of, and I think at the high end of the spectrum, you end up with one of the best players in the Bundesliga, and at the low end of the spectrum, you end up with a player who has so much potential still that you can probably sell him for a half-decent fee after this season. So it definitely makes sense to stick with him, especially given the market just isn't there for this kind of player at this point in time.
Well, I'm feeling very optimistic about Julian Brandt this season, because the very first thing that happened in the first friendly, I don't even remember against who it was that Julian Brandt blocked the ball out of bounds immediately after kickoff. Opponent had possession and he immediately blocked the ball around the halfway line, closed on his opponent, and was the first sort of to sprint and hunt down the space. So that set the tone, and I'm now completely assured, without watching much more football, that it's going to be Julian Brandt's season. So on that note, Lars, I teased it sort of in the intro, the injury malaise. I think I wrote it down sort of because I keep like looking at my phone and I get push notifications of Dortmund players are injured or maybe injured, or it may be worse than first expected, yada yada, etc. But at the same time, I have not really read up on who is all injured now, who can play. I think Marius Wolf picked up something. Guerrero's feeling his thigh right now also. Can you maybe shed a little light on the status of Borussia Dortmund's patchwork squad right now? Because after such a long season, as I previously mentioned, players sort of trickle into the team at a very slow pace and are maybe not fit and at different stages of their sort of preseason. And I mean, the season starts very soon. So what's sort of the status going into the new season with players who is available, or rather who is not really available, or fans should maybe worry about?
Well, I'm wondering why I have to do that when you wrote it down, Stefan.
I did not write it down.
You just said you did, but anyway.
I only wrote down injury malaise question mark. That's what I wrote down.
We have it on record, Stefan, that you said, or I'm delirious and completely misunderstood what you said. But anyway.
Maybe that, or I just misspoke.
Yeah, whatever the case may be. I don't know if I can even list all of them. Obviously, the players that went far in the Euros only are trickling back, as you said. On Thursday, the 3 Belgian guys were expected back and did return, as far as I know. Akanji was also expected back. I did not see him arrive on social media or whatever, but I'm assuming that he is back in his home country. Switzerland is where Dortmund's training camp is, only until Saturday, I think. So it's kind of remarkable that they make these guys come back for, maybe 1 or 2 training sessions and that's it. But it kind of shows that, Marco Rose doesn't have any time to waste in getting to know the players and group dynamics and all that. Emre Can is back, should be available for the start of the season. He was in like a press talk today and talked about being close enough to 100% after not, vacationing like Brazilian players did 15 years ago. He didn't say that, I said.
I'm just wondering what that means.
I mean, there was a cliche about Brazilian players taking things very chill during the summer and extending their summer vacation and coming back overweight and under-trained. So I think that's not necessarily the case these days. So everyone who isn't injured coming back, I don't think it's going to be too big a problem to get ready, certainly for the Bundesliga start in the middle of August, the cup game on, I think, August the 8th or so. That might be a bit early for some of these guys. So still missing and not returning for the training camp, as far as I know, are Delaney and Bellingham, obviously being the players who went farthest in at the Euros. But I think those are kind of 2 guys that I think we can somewhat safely assume take good care of their bodies, and especially in case of Bellingham, he's so young still, he shouldn't have too much of an issue getting into playing shape fairly soon. So those are the Euro guys, Malen being one of them. As I said earlier, he's probably not going to feature much in the friendly against Bologna on Friday. And then there's the injured contingent, Soumaila Koulibaly, new centre-back of PSG, not going to feature too soon after an ACL tear. Dan-Axel Zagadou is back in some parts of team training, or at least on the training pitch, but he said he's still a couple of months away from playing. Actually saw Marcel Schmelzer being back in parts of team training today, but obviously he only signed for insurance reasons, his contract extension. So, I mean, he's not going to feature, I wouldn't think anyway, for the first team this season. Marius Wolf, you already mentioned. I'm certainly going to miss some people, but Mats Hummels, he's back he's with the team now in team training, but he has problems with his, is it patella tendon?
Yes, I don't know.
In English, yes. It's a knee issue that he somewhat foolishly, I would say.
It's a tendon that goes over your kneecap, I think.
Yeah, he played through that for some reason at the Euros. I mean, obviously him being recalled to the national team, wanting to do well at a major tournament, I can understand it from that side. But from a Dortmund perspective, it certainly would have been better for him to rest up. It doesn't seem likely that he's going to be able to play, certainly in the cup game and maybe even to start the Bundesliga season. The same apparently goes for Guerrero with a calf problem. So the big issue that's been fairly visible also during preseason is the centre-back situation, where they are basically forced to play Akanji and Emre-Can, or move up someone from the second team. In the last few test games, they played with Leonard Maloney, a former US MNT youth international, and Antonios Papadopoulos, both players of the second team, which actually won their first game in the third division last weekend. And of those two, Papadopoulos certainly made the bigger impression. So if all else fails and they have to play one of those guys next to Akanji or Can, I would put some money on Antonios Papadopoulos. And given that he moved to Dortmund's second team from, I think, Hallescher FC, which presumably 97% of our listenership will never have heard of in the third division, that's not necessarily a great prospect for early in the season. But I mean, it's not like Bayern don't have these kind of issues with a lot of guys coming back from the Euros and a few other clubs as well. So I think nobody at Dortmund is really complaining about having players that are good enough to feature in the Euros. And the first few months after a big tournament, and actually there were more than one tournament, obviously, with Copa America, under 21s, Olympics. So a lot of clubs all over the world, and especially in Europe, will have these problems. So you just got to suck up and deal with it.
I hope Gio Reyna can get it together after scoring in the CONCACAF, whatever, against Mexico. Our new number 7, I hear. So lots of responsibility now.
Yeah, but he's not at the Gold Cup, which apparently the US are facing Qatar for reasons that are probably not sporting in the semifinals later tonight or whatever.
Oh, is that so? I didn't even know.
Yeah, I guess that says all about the big hype the US MNT is currently provoking in your country.
I don't know. I'm not a reference point for what the hype around the United States men's national team is and whatnot, because I really couldn't care less, to be honest. So, yeah, I'm sure there's hype somewhere. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows? Anyway, yeah, I think that pretty much covered it all. I don't, from the top of my head, remember anything. I mean, yes, Zagadou said that he'll probably take about 2 or 3 more months until he is back to, I don't know, team training or fully fit or whatever. So there's more patience for that. So I feel like the first 2 or 3 months of the season in general will be a bit shaky, and then maybe Dortmund have to run the table again. Who knows how it will go, but this is sort of my expectation. Anyway, I think we shall be back with an episode to preview the cup match and probably have a bit more info on that. Maybe there's even a press conference in between the episodes, the preview episode and the game, where we'll know more. But in the meantime, Lars, thank you very much for coming on and discussing the arrival of Donyell Malen with me. and what that could mean for Dortmund. So thank you. If you so will, please tell our listeners where to find you on the internet, and then I'll knock it on the head.
You can follow me, but not read many tweets these days at Lars Bollmann.
Yeah, you can follow me at Stefan Butzko. Also, not the highest frequency of tweets, I must admit. Nevertheless, you can do that. You can also follow all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. If you want to subscribe to this podcast, you can do that on iTunes, Amazon, Google, YouTube, etc. And of course, if you want to contribute financially, you can always find our Patreon on patreon.com/theyellowwall. Anyway, I'm starting to slowly get excited about the new season again, and about competitive club football after such at least the break felt really long to me. So yeah, I really cannot wait until the Bundesliga really starts, but that's a couple more weeks. So until then, I still have a little nice trip up to Cape Cod to make. So I actually get a couple more days off. So yeah. Anyway, in the meantime, I hope you all stay safe, get vaccinated, and as always, also thank you for listening. We shall be back soon. Goodbye.